You never expect the person you trust most to be the one hiding the biggest secret. At 27, I had what most people would envy on paper. I was a rising marketing executive at a tech firm in downtown Chicago, had just moved into my own loft apartment, and was in a serious relationship with Nathan Reed, a man my friends swore looked like he walked out of a cologne commercial. Nathan wasn't just my boyfriend. He was my best friend, my comfort zone, my future. We had been together for 3.5 years, and there were even quiet murmurs about engagement. He had met my family, cooked Thanksgiving dinner with me, and even helped me paint my living room walls a soft, cloud gray. But looking back, I realize how well someone can rehearse a lie. It started with something so small, so stupid, I almost didn't give it a second thought. One Thursday evening, I was scrolling through Netflix when my Apple Watch buzzed. Nathan had sent a laughing emoji to a message in our group chat. I picked up my phone to see the context, but the message didn't show up. Strange. I went back to our chat. Nothing. My eyes narrowed, heart pacing for a moment. Maybe it glitched? I clicked into his name, half amused. We were always sending each other funny TikToks, memes, random stuff, so I figured he might have just reacted to something older. Except when I opened our personal chat, there was a long pause before messages loaded. The latest one from him was nearly 3 hours old. A simple, heading into a meeting. Talk later. The same message I'd seen earlier. Why would he react to something now? What did he even react to? I remember staring at the screen, confused. Then I dismissed it. Maybe it was a glitch. Or maybe he reacted to a different conversation and hit the wrong button. I laughed to myself. God, I was being ridiculous. He wasn't even the tech-savvy type. But the seed had been planted. And once a seed is planted, well, it grows. The following weekend, we attended a birthday dinner for one of his coworkers. The rooftop bar buzzed with laughter and cocktails. Everyone was dressed in soft pastels, and Nathan looked sharp in his navy blazer. He introduced me to everyone like usual. "This is Emily, my girlfriend," followed by some cheesy compliment like, "the best thing that ever happened to me." But halfway through the night, I caught him talking to a woman at the far end of the bar. She was tall, sleek, with piercing eyes and a wine-colored dress that clung to her like a second skin. She leaned in when she spoke, too close, too familiar. I wasn't the jealous type, but something about the way he smiled, tight-lipped, boyish, like he had a secret, made my stomach twist. I asked him about her later. He shrugged. "That's just Vanessa. She works in the LA office." Chill, Em. Chill. The word stung more than it should have. That night, when I turned over in bed to face him, he was already asleep. Or pretending to be. My mind kept replaying that moment at the bar. His posture, her laugh, the way his fingers brushed her arm like they'd done it 1,000 times. Still, I convinced myself it was all in my head. I was overthinking. That's what I do when I'm tired or stressed. He loved me. He chose me. We were planning to go to Aspen in December. He'd even said he was going to meet with a jeweler about a ring. I fell asleep that night with that false sense of security nestled around me like a weighted blanket. But something still felt unfinished. Like a sentence that never ended. Like a truth half-whispered behind a locked door. For a few days, I tried to ignore the feeling that something wasn't right. I went through the motions: work, home, dinner, sleep, but inside, something itched at the back of my mind. It wasn't just that he had been distant. It was the way he tried to overcompensate for it. Suddenly, he was bringing home flowers, cooking dinner, complimenting me like we were in the honeymoon phase again. It would have been sweet if it hadn't felt so scripted. I started noticing the little things first. The way he'd pause before answering certain questions, like I'd caught him mid-thought. The slight tension in his voice when I asked how his day had gone. I'd walk into the room and see him quickly locking his phone, as if he were guarding a national secret. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe he was planning a surprise or going through something personal he didn't want to share yet. But then one night, something happened that I couldn't ignore. We were lying in bed. He had fallen asleep, or so I thought, and I was scrolling through my phone with the brightness dimmed. That's when I heard it, a soft buzz from his side of the bed. His phone lit up briefly. I glanced over. A name I didn't recognize. Can't wait to see you again, face blowing a kiss. My heart sank. It wasn't even the message itself, it was the emoji. That kiss. That smug little character felt like a slap across the face. My fingers turned cold. I wanted to wake him up right then and there, shove the phone in his face, demand answers. But I didn't. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, letting the silence crush me while he snored softly beside me, oblivious. The next morning, I played it cool. I kissed him goodbye, packed his lunch, and smiled like everything was fine. But inside, a storm was brewing. I had questions. I needed answers. And I was done pretending I didn't feel the shift. I started paying closer attention. Every call he took in the other room. Every unexplained late night. Every vague excuse that didn't sit quite right. I wasn't imagining things. There was a pattern, and the pieces were slowly falling into place. One afternoon, he left his laptop open on the kitchen table. He was in the shower, and the sound of running water gave me just enough cover. I hesitated for a moment. My hands were shaking as I approached the laptop. I told myself if I didn't find anything, I'd never do it again. But deep down, I already knew I would. I opened his browser history. My heart pounded with every scroll. Romantic hotel bookings. An Airbnb in the next city over, booked for 2 guests. A dinner reservation at a place we had never been together. Then I saw it, his email tab. My finger hovered over the mouse. I clicked. There it was. Dozens of messages to someone named S. Flirty, playful, intimate. Some were graphic enough to make my stomach turn. He told her he missed her laugh. He said she was the only one who really understood him, that he wished he could just run away with her. There was even a draft email to me, an apology he never sent. A coward's message, never delivered. I closed the laptop as I heard the water turn off. My face was burning. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at the table, numb. He came out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, humming like nothing was wrong. "You okay, babe?" he asked, drying his hair. I nodded. "Just tired," I replied. He kissed me on the forehead and walked into the bedroom. I watched him go, my mind already miles ahead. That night, I started planning. I began to test him, mentioning things to see if he'd lie. I told him I was thinking of taking a weekend trip with friends. He encouraged it a little too quickly. I told him I'd be working late next week. He barely blinked. It was as if he was waiting for the opportunity. He didn't know I was watching him now. I installed a tracking app on the spare phone we once used for traveling. I slipped it under the passenger seat of his car while pretending to clean it. He never noticed. The next time he said he was going out for drinks with his coworkers, I watched him leave from the window. Then I opened the tracking app. He wasn't going to the bar. He was driving across town. The little blue stopped at a building I didn't recognize. An apartment complex. I screenshot the location, timestamp and all. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I was past the shock. I was in strategy mode now. The next few days, I gathered everything, screenshots, emails, photos of the hotel booking confirmations. I wasn't just going to confront him. I was going to expose him. But I had to be careful. I needed the perfect moment. A public setting. An audience. Then fate handed me the opportunity. His birthday was coming up, and he insisted we throw a small party. "Just close friends," he said. "Nothing fancy." I agreed with a smile. Inside, I was already planning the guest list, and she was on it. How do I know her? Easy. I found her Instagram through a comment she left on one of his photos months ago. A casual red heart at the time. Back then, I hadn't thought much of it. Now, I studied her face like she was a case file. I created a fake profile. Flirty, friendly, harmless. I messaged her, pretending to be someone who met her at a yoga retreat. She took the bait. We chatted for days. I casually mentioned my boyfriend worked in finance, same company as hers. She joked, "Oh no, hope it's not the same guy," face with tears of joy. I pushed. "What if it is? Mine's name starts with A.D. Her reply? "OMG, same face with tears of joy, wouldn't that be awkward?" She had no clue who I was. I confirmed everything I needed.
Same man.
Same lies. She wasn't innocent. She knew he was taken. But she thought I was out of the picture. She was about to find out I wasn't. As the birthday party drew near, I planned everything to the last detail. I invited mutual friends, his coworkers, even a few distant relatives. I decorated the place with care, baked his favorite cake, played the part of the loving girlfriend perfectly. And then, when she walked through the door, I smiled. He turned pale the second he saw her. She looked confused, then concerned. Wait, what's going on? I stood in the center of the room, holding a gift box. I tapped my glass and smiled. Before we all celebrate, I have a special surprise for the birthday boy, I announced. He shook his head, barely whispering, "Don't." I ignored him. I handed him the box. Inside was a printed stack of emails, photos, and the hotel confirmation. Gasps filled the room. He looked at me, speechless. I turned to her. "Happy to finally meet you."
I hope he told you about me.
His live-in girlfriend of 5 years. Her mouth dropped open. The silence that followed was so thick you could hear hearts breaking. I stepped back, took a deep breath, and looked at the man I once loved. "You thought I'd never find out," I said softly. "So, I made sure everyone knew." It happened on a Thursday. I remember because it was raining, light, persistent drops tapping against my office window like a ticking clock reminding me something was about to break. By then, the pieces were already falling into place. I had collected fragments, half-spoken sentences, late-night calls ending the moment I entered the room, and the way his phone was never left unattended anymore. But suspicion is a fog. You can feel it crawl over your skin, but you can't grab it, not until something slices through it with clarity. That day, I got clarity. It started with a forgotten password. Or rather, his laziness. He never changed it. I had once helped him set up his iCloud years ago, when we were still us. Back when trust was implicit and secrets were only plot points in movies. He was in the shower. His phone buzzed 3 times on the kitchen counter. I wasn't even planning to look. But when your gut has been churning for weeks, when your sleep is haunted by what-ifs and your heart doesn't beat the same when he walks into the room, it only takes a second to break. The code? 0923. Our anniversary. His messages were a battleground. Not just with her, but with others. Multiple threads. Different names. Some saved under fake contacts like Jeff, car service, or Monica from work. But they were all real. And all very much not just about work or cars. I stood there, reading his words, his emojis, the pictures. My hand trembled, but I couldn't stop scrolling. I wasn't even crying, not yet. My body had gone cold, like I'd stepped out of myself and left the real me behind to burn. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the casualness. The way he flirted, joked, mocked. He'd told someone, "She's so focused on her own stuff, she won't notice anything. It's actually kind of cute." Cute? That's when the breakdown came. Not loud. Not violent. But internal, like every bone inside me had decided to collapse at once. I don't know how long I sat there, the blue light of the screen glowing against my face, illuminating the wreckage of everything I believed. When he walked out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around his waist, humming, I had already placed the phone back exactly where it had been. I looked at him like I had never seen him before. Because I hadn't. Not really. The emotional storm didn't hit all at once.
No.
It built gradually, like a tsunami held back by a trembling dam. My thoughts were racing. What should I do? Confront him? Cry? Scream? Leave? Stay and pretend? But something inside me whispered, "No. Wait." Wait for what? I didn't know. But I listened. The next few days were strange. I acted normal. Too normal, maybe. I cooked, cleaned, laughed, even slept beside him. And all the while, I was building something, an invisible wall between us, one brick at a time, made from every lie he had ever told. He didn't suspect a thing. Until one night, I changed the locks on our shared cloud account and pulled every screenshot I needed. Every picture, every message, every proof that could not be denied. I wasn't going to confront him in private.
No.
That would be too easy. If he wanted to humiliate me with his games, I'd return the favor with a play of my own. But not out of pettiness. Out of justice. Out of self-respect. The idea came during dinner with our mutual friends. He was bragging again about his job, about keeping everything in control, about how lucky I was to have him. And they laughed, not knowing the script had already been rewritten. I planned a gathering. Our anniversary party. A celebration of us. Everyone we knew would be there, friends, co-workers, even his parents. He loved the attention. He told me I was finally doing something right. I smiled. He had no idea what was coming. As the day approached, I prepared meticulously. Printed screenshots, organized them in a timeline, even included photos he'd sent and received. I created a slideshow, not crude, not aggressive, but clinical, almost corporate in its execution. A visual presentation titled, "The Man Behind the Curtain, A Closer Look." I timed it perfectly. Waited until the drinks were flowing, people were relaxed, and he was feeling like the king of his castle. I even toasted him, told everyone how much he meant to me. And then I dimmed the lights. The projector flickered on. The first slide was simple. Some truths deserve a spotlight. Gasps echoed through the room as the photos appeared. His messages.
His lies.
One after another. Like dominoes tipping forward in a rhythm of betrayal. He froze.
Pale.
Silent. He didn't even move to stop it. People turned to look at him. At me. Some whispered. Some sat with mouths wide open. A few even stood up, angry on my behalf. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, letting the evidence speak louder than any of my tears ever could. The presentation ended with the last message he'd sent, just days ago. She's too naive to ever find out. Besides, even if she does, what's she gonna do, cry? I looked him in the eye then, my voice calm but steeled. I didn't cry. I planned. The room erupted. Not with applause, but with reality slamming into his carefully built mask. Friends walked out. One of the women from the messages had the audacity to try to leave quietly. I let her. I wasn't here for her.
He tried to speak.
I raised my hand. You've said enough. This isn't your stage anymore. He begged later. At first angry, then desperate, then broken. I made a mistake, he said. No, I replied. You made a choice. Repeatedly. This is just the consequence. I moved out that night. Not because I was lost, but because I had found myself again. And the world? Oh, it knew now. Every mask he wore, shattered. Every lie, exposed. His job, on the line. His reputation, in ruins. I didn't do it to destroy him. I did it to free myself. Because sometimes the best revenge is making sure everyone knows the truth. And as I walked away, head high, spine straight, I whispered to myself, I'm done protecting the villain in my story. I couldn't wait any longer. After everything I'd uncovered, the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, I needed to confront him. Not just for closure, but for justice. My heart wasn't beating any more out of fear, but from a pulsing storm of truth that demanded release. I rehearsed what I'd say, over and over, but nothing I imagined could prepare me for what was about to unfold. I waited until the company's annual meeting, the one event where every department head, manager, and executive would be in the same room, including him. The room was a glass-encased conference hall, filled with spotless chairs, catered coffee stations, and the hollow chatter of people pretending to care about strategy slides. He stood near the front, his back to me, speaking confidently with the CEO. His posture still oozed arrogance, as if he hadn't just been caught hiding the very skeletons that could shatter his career. I walked in with my folder clutched tightly. Not nervous. Not hesitant. Just ready. I cleared my throat into the mic. I have something to say before this meeting begins. Every head turned toward me. A few raised eyebrows, a few confused looks. But his expression was the one I had been waiting for. His eyes met mine, and in that exact second he knew. The blood drained from his face faster than the air did from the room. Before we all dive into quarterly reports and projections, I said calmly, I think we should address something far more important, ethics. The CEO turned, puzzled. Is something wrong? Yes, I said, never breaking eye contact with him. Something's very wrong. I walked to the front and placed the folder on the table. This folder contains proof of data manipulation, misuse of company funds, and the systematic erasure of another employee's contributions mine. A gasp fluttered through the room. Whispers rippled like a wave. I heard one woman mutter, "Wait, is she talking about him?" I was told I'd never succeed, that I wasn't smart enough, experienced enough, or ready. So my ideas were stolen. My work was passed off as someone else's. And the person who did it is standing right here. All eyes shifted to him. He raised his hands. This is a mistake. Whatever she's claiming. I cut him off. I'm not claiming anything. I'm proving it. I opened the folder, revealing pages of emails, timestamp files, even company chat logs. I had printed everything. I'd spent nights compiling this. Every paragraph, every spreadsheet cell, every hidden metadata line that tied him to the deception. I'd even discovered he'd lobbied to get me reassigned to lower-profile projects while presenting my innovations as his own to upper management. He lunged for the papers. The CEO stepped in. Don't. I can explain, he said, voice shaking now. She's twisting things. We worked together on those projects she just misunderstood. Funny, I replied, how everything I touched somehow ended up under your name. Silence. No one moved. Then the CEO picked up the top sheet. His brow furrowed deeper with every line he read. He moved on to the next page, then the next. By the time he reached the end, his expression was stone cold. I want a full audit, the CEO said, looking directly at him.
Now.
Still, he tried to push back. This is outrageous. She's just bitter. No, I said louder now. I was silent. I gave you the benefit of the doubt. I stayed loyal. I worked harder than anyone, and still you told me I'd never be enough. You humiliated me behind closed doors and built your success on my silence. His jaw clenched. The image of control he'd so carefully built began to collapse. Someone in the back said, Is this why she suddenly vanished from the product team? Another voice louder. She was the one who built the client dashboard, wasn't she? Now the room turned on him. I didn't need to say more. I had made sure everyone knew. But then came the twist I hadn't expected. The CEO placed a hand on my shoulder. Would you consider taking over his role? Temporarily, while we sort this out. My breath caught in my throat. Me? You deserve the seat, he said. You built the foundation of this division. Everyone sees that now. I looked at him, the man who once smirked and said I'd never make it, who told me I wasn't built for leadership, who acted like I was disposable. Now his mouth hung open, no words left to wield, no lies strong enough to rescue him. For a moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered every time I went home crying. Every email where he copied leadership and conveniently left my name off. Every time he told me I should be grateful just to have a seat at the table. I'll think about it, I said, smiling, not out of revenge, but out of relief. It was over. I had confronted the monster and turned the entire room into a mirror he couldn't escape. And as he sat down, head in his hands, the truth finally caught up to him. He thought I'd never find out. So I made sure everyone did. The days following the confrontation were a blur of whispers, unanswered calls, and carefully worded texts that I didn't bother replying to. His world, once so meticulously curated, polished Instagram stories, strategically timed business updates, and that fake grin he always wore, was crumbling. And I watched, silently, not as a victim anymore, but as the architect of his unraveling. For so long, I had lived in his shadow, blamed myself for not being enough, for missing signs, for trusting too easily. But now the narrative was shifting. I wasn't a footnote in his life anymore. I was the headline. He tried to do damage control. Of course he did. First came the denial. He told everyone it was fake, that I was bitter, unstable, acting out. But the truth was too sharp to dull. Screenshots, bank transfers, voicemails, photos. Every piece of evidence, carefully timed, strategically released, sent not in rage, but with chilling precision. I wasn't just exposing him. I was dismantling him. The people around him started to backpedal. Friends turned into spectators. His business partner distanced himself with a public statement. And then came the silence, perhaps the loudest blow of all. When the noise dies and no one rushes to defend you, that's when the guilt finally echoes loudest. But here's the twist. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about truth, about reclaiming my voice, about no longer shrinking myself to fit his comfort. He spent so long building this image of perfection, this narrative where he always won. But I knew what lived behind that curtain. The manipulation, the gaslighting, the web of half-truths spun so tight that even I started to question my own memory.
Now?
That illusion was gone. And with it, the version of me that once loved him. I moved through my days with a new kind of clarity. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way I had been when I first uncovered the truth. This wasn't a fire that burned. This was ice, clean, cold, still. I had nothing left to scream. I had already spoken loud enough. The world had heard. He emailed me once. The subject line read, "Can we talk?" No greeting. No apology. Just a 5-line plea masked in condescension, like he still thought he had control. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The act of ignoring it felt louder than any reply ever could. But the silence, that was strategic. He wasn't finished. A week later, I received a package at my door. No name, no return address. Inside, a photo album. Old pictures of us. Laughing, traveling, celebrating things that I now knew were fake. But tucked in the back was something else. A letter, written in his handwriting. It wasn't an apology. Not really. It was a justification. A weak attempt to reframe the story. "I didn't mean to hurt you," it said. "I was just scared you'd leave if you knew who I really was." And there it was again, his signature move. He wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry he got caught. I sat with that letter in my lap for a long time, staring at the ink as if it might rewrite itself. But the words never changed. That night, I walked to the river. Not to throw the letter away, but to let it go, mentally, emotionally. I stood there in the cool breeze, letting it wash over me, letting it carry away the last traces of him I still carried. And as I turned to leave, I felt it. That eerie stillness. That sense you get when someone's watching. I froze. For a moment, I thought it was paranoia, that maybe I was just shaken. But no, something was wrong. I scanned the park across the river, the quiet path behind me, the darkened buildings looming nearby. And that's when I saw it. A flash. The glint of a camera lens. A shadow disappearing behind a tree. He wasn't done. He was watching me. I stood my ground, heart pounding, but I didn't run. I didn't hide. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and snapped a photo of the tree line. I wouldn't chase him. I didn't need to. He wanted to play games? Let him. Because the truth was already out there. The story had already turned. And no matter how hard he tried to rewrite it, people had seen the truth. The trust he once weaponized would never be his again. I walked away that night with a final piece of power he could never reclaim. Not because I exposed him, but because I survived him. And just before I turned the corner toward home, I whispered to the air, more to myself than to him. "Next time you think someone will never find out, remember me."